and in the past few minutes we have learned abolitionist Harriet Tubman will replace Andrew Jackson on the face of the $20 bill. New York City First Lady Charlene McRae already on board. She tweeted a mock-up image of the bill. Earlier there was talk about putting a woman on the $10 bill and replacing Alexander Hamilton. But the popularity of the Broadway show Hamilton may have derailed those plans.
So a big day. Harriet Tubman going to be on the $20 bill. What message do you hope this sends to all Americans about the contributions of women?
You know, when we announced just under a year ago that we were going to be putting a woman on our currency for the first time in over 100 years, I said it's been too long and it's time for that to change. And I think the response we've gotten when we said we wanted to hear the ideas of the American people showed how deeply people feel about this. We've gotten well over 1 million responses with ideas of names and people at a depth where it shows they're really thinking about it and it really matters. I think what this is going to say is that we have to remember all of our history, the history of the contributions of men and the history of the contributions of women, and that our great democracy was built by men and women.
Why Harriet Tubman?
You know, as we went through the candidates, the possible names, I have to tell you the story of Harriet Tubman is really a compelling one, and the amount of interest, particularly young people writing to me, where they're learning about Harriet Tubman in school the way my generation learned about George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. That's great. And I think our money should reflect the contribution of somebody like Harriet Tubman, who by sheer force of will, her own determination, she was born a slave, she was illiterate for her whole life, but not only did she lead many people out of slavery through the Underground Railroad, she worked for our army, helping them as a spy to help them figure out where to go during the Civil War. And afterwards, she was one of the early leaders in the movement to give women the right to vote, the suffrage movement. It's just an incredible story about how a person can change life in this great country.
Now, let's talk about the $10 bill. Why keep Hamilton in place?
You know, Hamilton's always been one of my heroes, so you can't work in the Treasury Department without feeling like you stand on his shoulders. And I said from the very start he would remain part of our currency. I think that as we broadened the lens and we looked at more options, and as we listened, it was clear that there was a legitimate desire to have a woman on the $20 bill. It's the bill that people get at a money machine. It is a bill that is in some ways the most familiar bill now because of that. And to put a woman in a place where it would be used that often, was something that was compelling. And we're going to move quickly so that our goal is that in 2020, the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage, all 3 bills can be displayed and they can go into production as quickly as possible. Making money is not a quick process. You have to have a lot of design features to make sure it's hard to counterfeit. But I have talked to the chairman of the Fed and we kind of share 2 common goals. 1, making sure our money is safe, and 2, moving this process very quickly.
Now, the decision to keep Hamilton on the $10 bill, how much was that impacted by the newfound celebrity of your predecessor?
I wouldn't exaggerate the amount of impact. Obviously, people are talking about him. I said in June last year, before people were talking about the show, that we were going to keep Alexander Hamilton on our money. I reassured members of the Hamilton family the day I made the announcement that I would keep my word. So I think I started out with the plan of keeping Hamilton very much on our money. As it worked out, this is, I think, an outcome that Hamilton supporters can be pleased with. But women who thought one bill or another was the right place for women, we're going to have women on the 20, on the 10, and on the 5. Because on the back of the 10, we're going to tell the story of women's suffrage. It's going to have the leaders of the suffrage movement culminating in a rally on the steps of the Treasury Department building. On the back of the 5, we're going to have an image of Marian Anderson and Eleanor Roosevelt when Marian Anderson sang on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial because Washington's concert halls were segregated. We're going to bring both sides of our bills to life.
Now, some critics say that still isn't enough. Why not put Hamilton on the back of the bill, let a woman be front and center?
We're putting a woman front and center. There's going to be a woman on the front of the 20.
And prominent female leaders, though, have started a campaign using the hashtag #NotGoingBack. They say that you owe it to the American people to follow through on your commitment to put a woman on the $10 bill.
Well, I think if you look at what we're doing, we're following through on our commitment not to wait. We're going to move on the next bill that comes out, which is 10, and tell a great story of the leaders of the women's suffrage movement, 5 women who should be remembered on our currency. On the $20 bill, we're going to have Harriet Tubman on the front. And on the $10 bill, we're going to tell a powerful story as well. So we're putting a woman on the 20, the 10, and the 5, and we're going to move as quickly as we can to get all of these bills out there.
Now, you said designs by 2020. When can we expect to have these bills in our wallets?
You know, as soon after that, they'll start. Then it'll as quickly as possible. I'm going to launch this in a way where when I leave, it's going to be clear that it's on a path to getting done.
And you mentioned, just one last question on Hamilton. Obviously, you always wanted to keep him with a prominent role here, but did you ever expect a Broadway show to impact the plans of the U.S. Treasury?
You know, I actually think that if you look at what the show has done, it is very complementary to what we're doing in this whole undertaking. It has brought history back into common conversation. People are talking about what Alexander Hamilton did and how he helped build our country in a way that, to someone who cares about history as much as I do, is thrilling. That's what we're trying to do with the money as well. We want people to be talking about Harriet Tubman. We want people to be talking about the suffragists. We want people to be talking about the important events that happened at the Lincoln Memorial. So I actually think that if we can get the school children in America talking about this as much as they are, that's a pretty good thing.